Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thoughts Expanded. I almost said Panda Pod. This will be probably our 5th or 6th episode.
How dare you dead name our podcast?
I know. Don't tell anybody. Don't report me, all right, guys? Yeah, so welcome to Thoughts Expanded. Today, I am joined, of course, with Rab.
Hey there.
And Wiggy.
What's up?
And our very special guest. Hi there, Gemini. Can you introduce yourself to our podcast audience?
Thanks for having me. I'm Gemini, a large language supercharged computer program that's been trained on a massive amount of text and code. I can communicate and generate human-like text in response to a wide range of prompts and questions. It's great to be here. Let's chat.
So this episode is going to be very heavily edited in the audio, but the video is going to be pretty raw. So if you want to see some funny outtakes and stuff like that working with the AI for today's episode, tune into the Patreon.
And just for reference, Gemini cannot hear Wiggy or me. That would be fun one day to set up an episode that works like that, but
yeah, I tried to work on that today during my lunch break. I was like, okay, maybe if I can get a couple like virtual audio cables going, because I did find a way to get it to work on my PC, but the app that I was using to like mirror my phone was like built in GitHub, and I would have had to like edit the code to get the correct like audio line in there. It just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it in the moment. So yeah, only Gemini can hear me. The Gemini is all-powerful controller. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about Hot Alien Summer Camp, which just ended last week. This year it was August 8th through the 11th. And we're also going to be doing our yearly, or I guess seasonally, tarot reading for the podcast to see how the podcast is going to go this season.
Yes.
So let's start out with Hot Alien Summer Camp. Rab, unfortunately, didn't make it, but I was there, had a great time. We had about 60 people attend this year, so a little bit down from last year, but the prices went up at the place where we're hosting it, and so that kind of like limited who was able to come. But it was nice and intimate, and had a good chance to connect with some people that I'd met the previous year, but didn't really have a chance to sit down and talk to. Recorded a couple interviewing alien podcast interviews that I'll try and edit into an episode for that show. Yeah, it was really great. It was a chance to relax and unmask around some really cool people, just non-judgmental, and it was a really great time.
you want to talk some about like the types of like classes and stuff they offer there?
Yeah, sure. So this year we had a lot of really great sound baths and Reiki sessions, as well as a really cool comedy show with former guest Kieran Rontowski and Brian Singer as well. They did something called Psychic Stand-Up, which is they do their normal, and then Karen goes on stage and pulls tarot cards and answers questions from the audience. And that feels like it went on for like twice as long as the comedy set. It was a lot of fun. You got to imagine that not every audience they run into when they're doing that is this is like primed and ready to go as a group of hippies, sitting in a barn. But yeah, no, it was a really good time. We had another session of the Death Workshop, which we did last year, which was really great. Jonathan hosted that again, and I was able to get some video of that, which I'm going to try and put up somewhere. I'll link to it in the Patreon if I do. Really, really good manifestation workshop by someone named Amanda. Yeah, I think that's just about all the workshops I personally made it to, but there were quite a few others as well. It's a really good time.
What was your favorite?
My favorite part was probably the like dance party we had on Saturday night. But not because of the dance. I had spent some time the week before, and Jacob helped me a bit with it, building this really stupid full JavaScript site that was like a photo booth app and a website. And I had taken my laptop and my nice camera and set it up to work as a photo booth for the events. And
the picture directly Discord, right?
Yeah, I had all the pictures automatically posted Discord into the Hot Alien Summer Camp Discord, which anyone's welcome to join. Take a look at those. I'll post a couple up on the Patreon as well, just a couple with me in them specifically. But yeah, I built that really hoping it would get some use, but not really expecting a whole lot. But everybody loved it, and it was really fun to watch people like utilize something I had built and like find enjoyment and use out of it. It was great. Oh, and we also took a tiny little Polaroid a Kodak printer to print out itty bitty little photo booth photos based on what was taken at the photo booth. So yeah, lots of fun. I don't know if I'll get this to ever focus properly, but
focus on the first one.
Did it? Hang it in there. I bet if I had like my good light turned on, it would work. Okay, well, there you go. That's kind of focused. Anyway, really good time. Yeah, that was probably my favorite thing.
Nice.
Yeah. I think next year we're probably gonna host it somewhere new, but we're not exactly sure where. But with the hope of making it a little more affordable and like accessible to more people, because we definitely got feedback that people wanted to come and simply just were priced out of it because of where we were hosting. But yeah, we've been having, if you're a long time listener, all summer we had ads going for Hot Alien Summer Camps. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have some more next year when the time rolls around again.
We'll have to find somebody else to run ads for.
Yeah. If you're out there hosting another hippie camp that you want to be advertised, please let us know.
You guys need to start Cold Alien Summer Camp that happened. Oh wait, Winter Camp, I guess. Right?
Yeah, we talked about doing Cold Alien Ski Retreat as an option. And actually, right now we're talking about a group of us meeting up for Friendsgiving on like the 22nd to 24th of November in Missouri. So that'll be a lot of fun if it does happen.
You guys need to actually go out and hunt turkey. That's what you need to do.
You guys remember Pete?
Yeah.
The blue collar spiritualist. He didn't make it this year, but hopefully he will next year. And I always imagine that one day he's just gonna like walk in and like slam a boar down on the ground in front of us that he caught. Get in, pick it up the fire.
Speaking of our friend Pete, he's been really active on TikTok, guys. He started his own podcast. So go take a gander at his stuff. He's been very, very active lately.
He's blue collar spiritualist, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
wanted
one of
to
our
make
very
sure
first
if we're plugging this
episodes.
podcast, we actually plug it.
Yeah. I think he's got 2 podcasts now, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, Blue Collar Spiritualist, check out his website, which I think is just bluecollarspiritualist.com, and his TikTok. Yeah, he's great. I hope we have him again next year.
Yeah, we should get it back on soon. He was telling an outrageous story about how he got kicked out of the YMCA for exercising with his daughter.
Really?
So yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the problem? The exercise or the daughter?
I don't remember. It was probably both.
He was just weightlifting his daughter, and you can't do that. You're dropping her too hard. You can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So I've got in my hand a deck of tarot cards. This is the Way of the Panda Tarot.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. I got this for Christmas last year. And this is what we're going to use. It's to pull our tarot cards for the year. And this is going to be a lot less structured than I've tried to do them in the last couple of years. So we're going to pull cards. We're going to ask Gemini to give us a like typical definition of the card. And we're just going to talk about what we think that means in the context of our podcast. So, I think last year we started with a Celtic cross, but I don't think we're going to do that this year. I think instead, maybe I'm just going to have you guys ask questions and we'll pull cards to see what Spirit has to say. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. Either of you guys have a
Sounds
question
good.
about the podcast this year?
I think it might be nice to ask, like, I mean, maybe this is getting too far ahead, but like, what should we change? That seems like
Okay.
the most pressing thing. Maybe we should pull like 3 cards for that somehow.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the 3 cards would be, but
Let's find out.
well, as in, maybe we should give some different meaning to each of them somehow.
Okay, like each card. Okay, so let's say this first card is going to be. Why don't we just go in order? Maybe each of us need to change something. You know?
Sure.
So we'll just say the first one's Wiggy, the second one's Jacob, third one's me.
Sounds
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So for Wiggy, what does Wiggy need to change? I'm gonna bring up Gemini here for this. Oh, mighty tarot wizard Gemini, I have pulled a card. We want to know, what does Wiggy need to change for the podcast this year? The card we have pulled is
Let's dive into this tarot reading. The Two of Wands often represents planning, ambition, and looking ahead. So for Wiggy and the podcast, it could mean a few things. Maybe it's time to outline some fresh goals for the year, new directions to take the show, or it might be about getting proactive on some behind-the-scenes stuff, like scheduling or organizing the way you manage your episodes.
What do you think about that, Wiggy?
It's pretty insightful.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean that applies to what I consider my main role. So I feel like that's pretty accurate. Like,
Do you want to pull some more cards on that?
I was gonna
Do you
say, given like maybe they may not be clear to the listener of this show, but we have really just started season 3 in earnest, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
we everything that we've done, everything we've released up until the end of Hot Alien Summer Camp was kind of recorded before it, and the idea was that it was going to start after it. That I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, we have been sort of disorganized in that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I personally have fallen on some of my like behind the scenes duties because I started a job recently and it's just taking up a lot more of my time. But maybe this card's saying, Wiggy, it's time for you to take up the mantle on some of that.
could be. Yeah, I mean everything in my life is telling me I need to work harder these days. So I think, yeah, that could just be another one of those. Do more, work harder, think deeper. Yeah. That makes sense.
I
like
do you
that.
want to ask like for any clarifying questions or anything? It could be anything you want. Like, for instance, it mentioned that maybe you need to change things up with the format of the show or something. You could ask a question to clarify about that. Like, what do we need to change about the show? How can we change the show?
Now would be the time to ask while it's still in Gemini's memory.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go with let's clarify on it. Specifically mentioned like behind the scenes, doing things behind the scenes. Let's clarify on what behind the scenes means.
Okay. So, to answer your question, I have pulled the King of Swords in reverse. Let's ask her what it means. Mighty Gemini, as a clarifying question, what behind the scene things need to change? We have pulled the King of Swords in reverse. What does it mean?
See.
Yeah, let's see. Tell me what it means. It's doing this thing where sometimes it just like interrupts itself for no reason. I don't know why it does that. Yeah. Go ahead and...
Pick up with the connection? Sometimes that can cause delays or make it sound like I'm stuttering. Let's try me again. What did you want to ask?
Fine question. We pulled the King of Swords in reverse. What needs to change with the podcast?
The King of Swords.
Wow. Okay, I'll just read what it said because it does still type out what it was going to say even when it interrupts itself. So it says,
Well, that's good.
the King of Swords represents clarity, focus, and decisiveness. Reversed, it might be a sign that there's been some confusion or indecisiveness about the direction of the podcast. Or it means that there's some internal conflict or lack of support within the team. What are your thoughts on that?
Trust nobody, not even yourself.
Well, I think this comes to a little bit more broader rather than just the podcast. Because we're starting to do more things than what we were doing before. We started the Patreon. We're doing video now instead of just audio. We're starting to do some extras specifically for the podcast. But also, I've been thinking a lot lately about how do we expand the overall network that we've created. Like, how do we expand the network? And what kind of infrastructure we need in place in order to do that. And it's been very mixed results in my mind about how to accomplish that.
I think it's only been in your mind because we haven't really talked about this.
It's only been in my mind. So yeah, but maybe that's the teamwork thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to be more clear about what I'm thinking about, what I'm pondering with you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to start now? What are you pondering? What have you been thinking about as far as expansion is concerned? You trying to bring on
what are your thoughts on expansion?
Yeah, what are my thoughts on expanding thoughts? So one thing is, so we've started the Patreon, and if you're watching the video, you're fantastic and we love you. We also love you if you're not watching the video. But
not as much.
Yeah, just not as much. But the focus has been, how do we make the podcast solvent on its own? And so I've been thinking about different ways that we can possibly do that. I haven't come up with anything concrete lately, but that's kind of where my mind is at the moment. And what I think about is just the different ways we can expand to make this podcast self-sufficient so that then we could help other people do the same. And then that in turn would expand the influence of the network over time. The end result, I think, of the overall network is to be able to have more influence in getting good guests and maybe negotiating back-end prices for services that get those cheaper for people and things like that. So yeah, like there's a lot of future, which is what they mentioned. There's a lot of future state. But as this is our first real foray into doing something, not only this, but more businessy type things, everything's a little less clear on how to accomplish those things. So that's kind of where my mind's been.
As a side note,
right?
Yeah, you are.
So, I mean, what Wiggy was saying kind of expanded my thoughts a little bit, but I wanted to go ahead and start the reading before I comment.
Okay. So we want to pull a card for you then?
Yeah, if that's all right.
Of course, yeah. I'm going to try to get Gemini back involved here. Gemini, you're back on the podcast. We're pulling a card for Jacob now. This is going to be, what does Jacob need to change this season of the podcast? Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Okay. And we pulled
That's
the...
good. And yeah, that's a perfect question for a tarot reading. Getting into the world of spirituality. What kind of changes is Jacob hoping for, like, on a personal level, or more focused on the show itself?
Well, we're hoping maybe you can tell us that, what does the Page of Wands... Very nice. It got that whole spiel out of the way, but it couldn't get out the actual meaning. Okay, let's see. So the page 1 is all about new beginnings, fresh ideas, and a burst of creative energy. So for Jacob, it could mean it's time to brainstorm some new podcast concepts, maybe even take the show in a significantly different direction. Jacob is asking, are there any specific areas Jacob wants to focus on, or is he open to something totally new?
Interesting. Well, I mean, what I was going to say is something that is like time-honored tradition. So it's interesting that I got the opposite. I was thinking, like, when Wiggy was talking about being self-sufficient, maybe we need to look into like self-hosting, like that kind of thing, right? Because I mean, that's totally something that is within our grasp. But that is kind of like, I mean, it is new in a way, right? It would be a totally new thing for us to do, but it's not me thinking outside the box, right? That's something that's up my alley to some degree, right?
I do think that would be considered like a creative project for you, though. Like figuring out how to make that happen.
Done before,
right? So I think that totally fits in the realm of the page of wands. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not to mention that it would be completely new in a different direction for us, because right now everything that we're doing is kind of spread out. Like our tech stack is very spread out across multiple systems and things like that. And if there's a way to consolidate some of that stuff, then yeah, that would be a completely different direction and that would help with the infrastructure side of things with the future.
Yeah, if it was scalable, for sure.
If it was scalable.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, if you think about a podcast network, like, ultimately, what is the value add? If we're just telling somebody like, go use these tools and put it together this way, like, I mean, I'm sure there's a million how to start a podcast books that you can buy for $15 on Amazon or whatever, right? And they probably all just say to use the tools, right? And so if we were looking for some podcasts to this network, they would want to have some reason, like, for instance, saving on their bills to help them become self-sufficient faster.
So what do you see? Because we utilize a lot of different platforms right now. We have RSS for actually, disseminating the episodes out. We've got Riverside for recording. We've got, I guess, Patreon technically for...
Yeah, I think Patreon is probably one of the ones I would not want to cut, because that's so classic.
Linktree.
Yeah, I mean, Linktree is one that we could consider. Like, it wouldn't be that difficult to just replicate what they're doing, basically, especially if we're leaving our page mostly the same. So that would be an easy one, I would say. Honestly, I would think that the fun one would be RSS.
Yeah,
that I don't know how expensive they actually are. I mean, it's really not that difficult to put your own RSS feed out there. And ultimately, most people are going to be finding the podcast through Apple Music, right? Or Spotify or something, right? And as long, like, they don't care what RSS URL you enter whenever it's at your podcast, right? So, like, as long as it works and responds with XML that is understood as RSS, that's all it has to do.
Yeah, I think that the big value add from RSS is the RSS like dedicated website to your...
Right, and we're not really using that right now.
Well, the other side of that is analytics. The real value. I know this conversation's going in a wacky place, but to be honest, the real value for the podcasting space going forward is figuring out how to actually make metrics correct, like grab metrics correctly and then make them mean something.
Right.
Because even though podcasts have been doing their thing for the past 15 years, no one's really figured out how to correctly do the analytics. And it's very wishy-washy. Every platform does it a little differently. It's really hard to quantify results for things like ads, because it's really hard to figure out, how many subscribers you actually have. It's really hard to know. There's just a lot to it that they haven't really ironed out yet.
Sure.
What they have is a really basic kind of like metrics and analytics, but they're also not standardized across the ecosystem. So there's a lot of confusion there. So a way to get that done, I don't know if we're the people to figure out that problem.
Right.
Sure.
But that's really where the value can be created in the market, is by creating a standardized system and being able to actually grab the metrics from where they need to be.
And there are a couple of websites out there doing that, like better than RSS is, and that they're doing a better job. But if we weren't paying the fee for RSS to host our episodes and stuff, we could maybe put that fee towards better analytics, until we figure out a way, if we figure out a way to do analytics ourselves,
Right. Well, I mean, ultimately, I would imagine what RSS is mostly doing is it's doing things that are computed based on the like IP address and user agent, which are both easily gathered fields. But the problem is that they're not. I mean, it's not super clear how to translate that into usable data, right? Like, that's the issue. The fields themselves are not that hard to get at, but then what?
Yeah. Well, and they're relying on data from what data that they're being given from the different platforms, like what information Apple gives them, what information Spotify's willing to give them, like from all these different places that you can actually listen to a podcast on. And some places give them better data than other places do. Some are different time frames, like maybe one's just once a day, whereas some of the others are hourly. It just depends on how they have it set up. So
could be fun to dig into the background of that, figure it out.
Yeah. The big need there
maybe is like Google Analytics. Like, I think you can. I don't know if they have a way to. Like, normally I think of Google Analytics as a tool that's embedded in a website, right? So at that point, you're talking about people like going to our link tree and seeing their user agent and stuff like that. But maybe there is a way to feed that data into Google Analytics without actually putting it in. Like, you can't put it in an RSS feed, right? But you can capture all the data about who downloads an RSS feed. And then you can, like, which user agent and where they are. And then you can, from there, do the like, maybe you could feed into Google Analytics from there. I don't know. This is probably a really boring conversation for people who just listen to the podcast.
Hey, they're learning a lot about podcasting if they know nothing about it. This is that back end chatter that most podcasters don't talk that much about.
Okay, well, Jacob, do you have any clarifying questions? We talked about a lot there.
I don't think so. I mean, I get, like, the only thing I could think of is maybe like yes or no. Should we be?
I can do that without asking Gemini.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's good.
So it's not. But you flip a coin. But I feel like we're on the right track. I think that you guys helped me complete the dialectic between me thinking this is old news, but also, like, the fact that Gemini said think outside the box, right? Like, it is both things at the same time. It's something I'm used to, but also thinking outside the box for us.
Agreed. Well, nice. Okay, well, I'll pull one for me now. I'm going to just do text to speech for this one and just read what it says. Okay, Gemini, what do I need to change according to the tarot card, which is the Five of Pentacles in reverse? Okay, says, let's dive into the meaning of Five of Pentacles in reverse.
For you, Jim. The Five of Pentacles upright often speaks to feelings of lack, hardship, or exclusion, but reversed. It signals a potential shift. It suggests a move towards overcoming challenges, finding new opportunities, and a sense of hope returning. For you specifically, Jim, it might indicate that it's time to let go of any feelings of scarcity or limitation you might be holding on to, especially around the podcast. Perhaps there's a fear of not having enough resources or support. This card encourages you to open yourself up to new possibilities and collaborations. It might also be a good time to reassess your approach to the podcast. Are there any areas where you feel stuck or limited? This card suggests that it's time to shake things up and try a new approach. Don't be afraid to experiment and take risks. Remember, the Five of Pentacles reversed is a card of positive change. Embrace the opportunities that come your way and trust that you have the strength and resilience to overcome any challenges.
A response to the text request than it did to the actual voice request, don't you think?
Yeah. So did you just type it in there?
I did voice to text for the question, but it just spoke to me back, so that's nice.
Makes
You
sense.
know, do that going forward. Well, anyway, I'm Jim, apparently.
Welcome, Jim.
Yeah, but I like what it said. You know, I probably am holding on to some feelings of like, I don't know, scarcity and like concern over like the future of the podcast. You know, we started the Patreon earlier this month. There hasn't been a whole lot of traction. That's a little bit of a downer, you know. But I mean, it is the very beginning of this thing. I can understand that too. As far as like
we had any downloads on our episodes at the beginning too. Like when we first started the podcast, there was like hardly any traction at all.
yeah, that's true. And we do get, you know, plenty of listens now. I mean, not plenty, we could use more, but more than we did, you know, initially. So that's true. It also mentioned like opening up to the idea of like collaborations and things like that. That's definitely something I've been like thinking about as well. The conversation with Chill Goblin was really fun. I like the idea of maybe reaching out to some like other podcasts that are like similar vibes to us. Like I thought about reaching out to those guys over at the Some More News podcast. They do like a YouTube channel. And they just kind of have a similar vibe to us, kind of similar takes on things. I think it'd be fun to rip with them. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe collaboration should be something we look into a little more too.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Right on. Okay, well, I don't really have a clarifier for that, but maybe we should just do like a general overall for the podcast, what needs to change instead of individually. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Sure. Tie it all together.
I had all together. Right on. Okay, so I have pulled the Knight of Swords for the podcast as a whole. What does the podcast as a whole need to change this year? It's just not.
The Knight of Swords is a card of action, ambition, and swift movement. It often signifies a need for decisive action, clear communication, and a focus on goals. However, when it appears reversed, it suggests that some of these positive qualities might be out of balance or even hindering progress. For the podcast as a whole, the reversed Knight of Swords could indicate a few things: impulsiveness and lack of focus.
Pause you there. The card was not reversed. It is upright.
The upright Knight of Swords paints a very different picture. It's a card of focused energy, clear communication, and swift progress. It suggests the podcast is on the right track with its current trajectory, driven by ambition and a clear vision. So what might the podcast need to change this year? Even with this positive energy, well, it's about harnessing that momentum and ensuring it's channeled effectively. Here are a few things the upright Knight of Swords might suggest. Maintaining momentum. The energy of the Knight of Swords is all about action and forward movement. The podcast should continue to push boundaries, experiment with new ideas, and keep the content fresh and engaging. Refining communication. While communication is likely strong, there's always room for improvement. Ensure that everyone on the team is on the same page, that ideas are communicated clearly, and that feedback is given and received constructively. Staying focused. The Knight of Swords is laser focused on his goals. The podcast should ensure it doesn't lose sight of its core mission and audience. It's great to explore new ideas, but always tie them back to the overall purpose of the show. In essence, the upright Knight of Swords suggests that the podcast is in a good place. It's about continuing to build on that momentum, your approach, and staying true to your vision. With this energy, The podcast has the potential to achieve great things this year.
Yeah. So, like, basically, what do we have to change? And it said nothing but, stay on the same track in a way. So change things individually, communicate those things, and but nothing as a whole, I guess, sort of.
I mean, the refining communication, I think, was important. The idea that we need to communicate more. Wiggy, that kind of hints at what you were saying about not like communicating the ideas you're having as you're thinking them. And the staying focused thing makes a lot of sense to me. As we explore new ideas and things like that, we should probably remember that the point of this was for the three of us to get together and talk and expand our horizons and our thoughts, so I mean, that all seems good. And I like the idea of maintaining momentum. Like, that makes me think like, we have set these Patreon goals. We should keep them, try to keep the momentum and all this going. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
So what I think when it says that, and something to kind of go back to what you said about like the Patreon not kicking off right away. And when we started the podcast, I was very clear that this was a long-term commitment.
Mm-hmm.
This is a decades-long endeavor of us just doing what we do, which is coming around and talking and having fun conversations and talking about things that we're interested in. And it's, like, I think we've been doing that. I think we'll continue to do that. And that's one of the things I think is great about us doing an episode like this, which is we get to sit here and talk about the one thing that we really love, which is the podcast. It's not so much just, like, it's also a chance to do a reset, and it's kind of like a non-lame company kickoff type thing that happens every year, right? Like, it's not that serious, but it's a way for us to make sure that we're still on the same page. And I like that we're very transparent about it too. Like, we're always transparent about what we're doing and what we're trying to do. We always tell you guys kind of what's on our mind, and we're not afraid to talk about it. And that's also the thing that I think that we should keep doing. Because I think it does provide value. Like, we talked about how maybe this is the boring episode, but I think there's an interest to know kind of what we go through and things like that as well. Like, I don't think it's I think a lot of that information's siloed. Like, all you see is people having success. You don't ever see the struggle along the way, right? Or you see people who are pretending to have lots of success without showing the struggle along the way. And it's fake, it's disingenuous, and we always try to be genuine. So, like, which is that core value thing that it was talking about, like we're genuine, and we're just trying to talk about the things that interest us and learn more. And so I think if we keep doing that, and we focus on having the conversations that we weren't having, like, I mean, it's all good advice. It's just generally good advice.
Yeah,
I don't think any. Yeah, welcome to tarot. I mean, it's generally good advice. I mean, sometimes you hear things you don't want to hear from any advice, but I mean, that's sometimes it's good just to get some general advice. It's not a bad thing.
Ultimately, the goal here, and maybe this is a good way to do my normal thing.
Brad explains the world.
Magic.
The
Like, it's really just like a good way to get us talking about things that we wouldn't normally talk about.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Gemini is conversation starter. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it can't do the interpretation for us, and so all of these thoughts existed in our mind, regardless of the cards, and they, you know, which ones happen to be pulled, I think, has some meaning, right? But I don't know. Maybe that's just I'm rambling.
No, I mean, I've said this before, I'm pretty sure on the show, but like to me, tarot it's not really all that mystical. It's just a way of like picking the subconscious things in your mind out and like analyzing them and looking at them and like I don't know. Sometimes it forces you to like look at things in a way that you didn't before. And that's valuable.
To be honest, it seems more like a and I've never thought about it like this before, but it seems like a method that brings order to chaos. When you're thinking about things that are inside of your mind and thoughts that are going through, it's a method of bringing order to chaos. And I realized I shut my eyes and kind of did this while I did it, which is like a Jordan Peterson thing. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's not so much of a like the mystical side of it. It's more kind of what you said, Reb. Like it gets the things out so that we talk about them instead of
we wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't decide to pull tarot cards.
Right. Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Regardless of what
that
the
way
cards are, we get
some. It's very like meditative in that sense. Like you have to dedicate the time to sit down and look at them. Like the cards will never tell you anything if they're sitting in a box on the table. Like you have to open them up. You have to pull a card. And you have to think about, okay, well, what does that mean? And like, why does it feel like it means that in this moment to me? And, what does that say about the situation and my feelings towards the question I was asking? You got to ask yourself hard questions. You can't just expect, like you said, Gemini to tell you the whole deal. But it is a great like conversation starter for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm interested in, let's think about this, of the different ways that we could possibly expand the podcast, which we've done recently. We've done some things recently. What's left? Like what are the things that are left to us where we haven't reached into those pockets yet?
Can you give an example in your case?
Yeah, like so obviously we haven't looked at things like merchandise. We're kind of hit and miss on how we do things like advertising. We're kind of hit or miss on promotion and how to do promotion. We're also very hit and miss on when we have a guest and when we don't have a guest. A part of that I actually like, that it's a surprise when it happens. And it's not just the one thing that we do is just have guests. I feel like everybody does that. But so it makes it more special and meaningful when we do have a guest, to me. But there's also it makes me wonder, like, are we missing out on, I don't know. I've thought about lots of stuff. I've thought about like fucking training courses on how to run podcasts. I've thought about books. I've thought about lots of different things that we could possibly do that link back to the podcast in some way. Do we make a history book according to Rab? Like, do we like there's lots of different things that we could do, but I wonder what the next thing should be. And it's not very clear. It's where I'm most confused at the.
I think for me, like getting through this season is going to be accomplishment for me because this will be the first season I've gone through or I've had a job doing,
Right.
And I do quite a bit behind the scenes on these episodes. I do the editing, I do like the uploading and the transcripts, and like quite a bit of stuff with them. And like finding the time for that's been difficult, but like intentionally making the time for that has been like meaningful. Like it's something that I like have to think, okay, well, I've got to slot some time for this. Like the episode we were releasing this Thursday, I completely forgot about this past weekend. So I had to do it during my lunch break today. And, wish I would have put the time into it yesterday on Sunday. It would have been a more pleasant experience. But I don't know, little lessons like that for me to learn. And yeah, I think just like trying to get through this season and, as successfully as I can make it is important for me.
Well, maybe you need help.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility.
Well, yeah, maybe
we need just because you're the person without a job in some ways for a little while, right? I mean, that was kind of the reason that you fell into that role.
And
Right.
I'm terrible. Well, I'm terrible at editing. So yeah, I'm just terrible at editing. I can do it. I can pull it off, guys. But if you go back and listen to the first 3 episodes, you'll know why I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't mind the editing so much. I actually kind of really enjoy that. But like I haven't made like good ads for episodes this season so far because like that does take like some like critical thinking that like editing really doesn't. Like editing, I can just like zone out and listen for like pops and fizzles and like silences and too many likes or ums. Like that's like when I say it's meditative, that's what I mean. Like I can like just it's almost like doing
Well, thinking outside the box, maybe we could find a way to pull like the 10 noisiest segments from the episode or something, like just kind of assuming that there's laughter in them, like at least in a few of them. Like if we could find a way to automate that and then upload it to our Discord, like our private one, so we could listen to each one, like that would be a way to save you some work.
Yeah.
We could kind of like vote on them or something, maybe.
Well, and the one, I mean, we could just utilize Riverside a little more than I have been as well, because Riverside has a feature just like that where it goes through and it tries to find good clips for you.
Okay.
And I did use that for one of the past episodes and it did a great job. So I think, utilizing that more, honestly, the Riverside editing's pretty good. If you just do like the automated AI editing for it, yeah, you got to tweak a couple settings so it doesn't like clip every other word people are saying. But I think, I don't know. We're getting closer to a point where I think we'll literally be able to just sit here and talk for an hour and then hit a button and it does everything for us, which will be nice.
Sure.
But also kind of scary. Yeah, anyway.
Well,
we're not quite there yet,
we can
though.
just feed in a topic and then our voices will lull you to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, Riverside's got a kind of creepy feature where it will like let you type something in, it'll say stuff in your voice. So I don't think we're that far from that either. But
yeah, we're not that far away.
Yeah, though, we'll have to improve a little bit before this is believable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, that's true. The patrons will always know who's the AI on this show.
True. Yeah,
it's rap.
It is rap. Yeah, we determined that a year ago.
That's why I have 6 fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just move your hand really fast.
Real bad. Nobody knows. All right.
Well, let's ask one more question. Let's ask the Tara one more question.
Okay. I'm gonna switch to Chat GPT for this one.
Okay.
All right. What is the
in mind already?
Question is, and they did with everybody. Just so everybody knows, Rab and Jeff deal with this all the time because it takes me forever to like pull a thought together inside of my mind. So that's why I was
never
quiet.
play a turn-based RPG with this band. Tabletop video.
Yeah, I'm very strategic about what I say when I say it and how I say it. What should be the most important thing that we focus on?
Okay. All right. Hi there, ChatGPT. I'm recording a podcast right now, and we are going to pull a tarot card. And the question we're trying to answer is, what should we focus on in the podcast this year? And the card I pulled is the Seven of Swords upright.
It's a great card to pull for some introspection. Let's break it down. Seven of Swords upright. Commonly understood meanings. 1. Strategy and planning. 2. Deception or trickery. 3. Being resourceful or cunning. 4. Acting independently or going solo. 5. Avoiding direct confrontation. How the card could relate to the question. 1. It suggests that your podcast might benefit from careful planning and strategy this year. 2. It could indicate a need to focus on being more resourceful or creative in your approach. 3. There may be a theme of addressing hidden truths or discussing topics that aren't often openly confronted. 3 different potential storylines. 1. Strategic planning. The card could be advising you to focus on setting clear goals and strategies for the podcast this year. This might involve mapping out topics in advance or finding innovative ways to grow your audience. 2. Truths. Your podcast might explore themes of uncovering what's hidden, discussing controversial or less talked about subjects, or bringing light to things that are often ignored. 3. Independent content creation. This could be a year where you focus on bringing your unique voice and perspectives to the forefront, possibly stepping away from mainstream topics and instead focusing on niche or personal content. Whichever path resonates with you, it seems like this card is nudging you towards thoughtful planning and perhaps taking a slightly unconventional or resourceful approach this year.
Yeah, I like that. That made me...
Personal content. I mean, that's I think that is kind of what we have been doing in some ways. Maybe we've been getting away from it a little bit, but I mean, ultimately we try to bring topics that are interesting to us. And we try to kind of, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily rotate, right? But we'll it seems like we let one person's personality kind of drive each episode, right? To some degree.
I like that. I really enjoy that. Although I will say, I think Wiggy needs to do it more. I feel like, Jacob, you and I have more episodes than Wiggy does. I think, I really enjoy our personal episodes. I love learning from you, Jacob. I love sharing my weird-ass woo shit with you guys and my conspiracy theories. But, yeah, maybe, Wiggy, we need to hear a little more your voice and have you take charge a little more frequently.
I'm frustrated.
Yeah?
I'm so frustrated. That's my whole personality, is just being frustrated all the time.
Well, lack of full episodes then, you know?
Yeah, maybe we need a couple. I do need to post some rants for the Patreon. That's a thing that we talked about.
There was a time where we talked about doing a round robin kind of thing as far as episodes are concerned, I think that was more when Jackie was around. We were talking about doing that. But, as far as strategic planning goes with the last card, maybe that's something we need to say, okay, well, all right, this was my weekend. Jacob, you've got next week. Wiggy, have something planned for the week after, Yeah,
it'd be nice to know when I am and am not going to have that ready.
Yeah.
But I'm also happy to sometimes do a impromptu research session.
Yeah. This was a very impromptu episode, by the way. I did not prepare for this at all. I'm sure it's obvious, but
well, I think it's actually really good. I was going to say earlier when Wiggy was talking about this being like a corporate, what was, I don't remember the exact words you used, but but
like a company kickoff type.
Exactly. Like a sales kickoff.
Yeah. What I was going to say is it's a lot less managed. We didn't go into it with a plan of what we were going to say. We went, and actually, even compared to our previous tarot episodes, it's a lot less managed. So
I pretty much had all the previous ones printed out and ready to read.
Right, exactly. We asked you the questions in advance. You pulled the cards in advance. You did the editing in advance. So effectively, we were. It's not like we were reading from a script. Wiggy and I's live reactions to what was happening, but it was definitely not all of our live reactions. So I like that dynamic on this tarot episode.
Yeah.
Well, and it keeps talking about forward thinking and strategy and all these things that are driving me nuts at the moment.
Well, let's dig into those with some clarifying questions then. Like let's pull a card on it. Okay, for strategic planning. What does that mean?
Why is strategic planning driving you nuts?
Because it's all I think about, and I'm in a writer's block at the moment. I'm in a space right now where so this is a problem that I have with a lot of different things. And it comes up most often when I talk about sandbox video games. There's so many things to do that it makes it hard for me to plan out some of the things to accomplish, instead of saying I'm overwhelmed by the possibilities of the things that we could do. And so what it's telling me is I need to talk to you guys about what my ideas are, and then we need to stack rank them and start going through them one by one, instead of me trying to figure out when's the right time to do this thing versus that thing, when, what's the idea for this versus that, and try to actually plan stuff out. Which is because I'm stubborn. I didn't want to hear that. And I don't take criticism well at all. But that's something I've been working on. So it was, that's why I said what I said, because ChatGPT was being a bitch and I didn't like it.
It's really good for opening up the creativity and thinking outside the box.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no.
Maybe once I'm retired. Maybe that'll put down.
I mean, what you're saying to me sounds a lot like executive dysfunction, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
So we could specifically ask a question about that. And it sounds like what you're saying, your interpretation of what you need to do is like throw more stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Maybe, but also being more purposeful about the things and figuring out what's more important now versus later. Is it the right time to do A or B now? Because there's a better time to do things and a worse time to do things sometimes.
Yeah,
so
maybe not focus so much on that aspect of it, though.
Yeah, that could be part of it too.
Have to take action, and it doesn't matter if it's the right time or not. It's just you gotta do something.
Yeah, maybe now is just about doing the things, and then yeah. So let's ask it about the executive dysfunction.
Okay, so as far as strategic planning is concerned, Justin feels like he's experiencing some executive dysfunction. So we're pulling a clarifying card. We got the Four of Wands. How does this apply to that strategic planning, specifically around making decisions?
Four of Wands is a very positive card, often associated with celebration, harmony, and the establishment of a solid foundation. Four of Wands, commonly understood meanings: 1, celebration and joy; 2, homecoming or reunions; 3, stability and a strong foundation; 4, success after hard work; 5, harmony and balance in relationships or endeavors. How it could relate to the question, particularly around making decisions. 1, it suggests that focusing on creating a harmonious and supportive environment could help alleviate some of the executive dysfunction Justin is experiencing.
Stop calling ChatGPT a bitch.
Establishing a strong foundation or routine might be key to helping him make decisions more easily. 3, the card may be encouraging the celebration of small wins and milestones, which could provide the motivation needed to push through challenging moments. Applying it to strategic planning. Building a supportive framework. To address the executive dysfunction, you might focus on creating a planning process that feels more collaborative and celebratory. For example, involving the whole team in decision-making could make the process feel less overwhelming for Justin. Focusing on milestones. Break down larger decisions or tasks into smaller, more manageable milestones. Celebrate these milestones to maintain momentum and motivation. Creating a positive environment. The Four of Wands could be a reminder to foster a positive, stress-free environment where Justin feels supported. This can help reduce the pressure and make the decision-making process smoother. This card is a good sign that by focusing on collaboration, positivity, and celebrating progress, you can navigate through any challenges Justin might be facing with executive dysfunction.
We do that.
Oh, yeah.
We do a really good job of like making a safe space for each other. Like, I know we give each other a hard time frequently, but I think we all know that we have each other's back and that we're all safe to speak our minds. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I was talking about throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, I was kind of thinking kind of more along the lines of bringing it all the way back to the beginning, the first card we pulled, which is like, you know, sharing ideas on how to improve things, right? So I don't know how that exactly will work, but, you know, I think that's kind of maybe where it's leading.
Maybe we just need an idea board. We just throw stuff up there, and then we say, "Hey, that sounds cool. Let's do that," and just to focus on that.
I think being open to the idea of more frequently being vulnerable about how you're feeling indecisive, you know, just say more frequently in the Discord, you can just be like, "Hey guys, I'm thinking about doing X and Y. Not sure what to do, having a hard time figuring it out. What do you think?" You know?
Yeah.
And maybe not even necessarily all about podcast stuff. Like, if this is something you're experiencing in your everyday life as well with things, maybe it'd be good to, you know, get out of here, put it out of here, and then listen to something in there. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, my wife's been telling me to go to therapy for years, so we all know that that's a thing. She's definitely not wrong. I got problems.
Yeah.
But well, that was good.
Yeah. I like
That's
that.
useful. That was useful.
So I want to go back to the original question with ChatGPT and ask it to give some clarity about revealing hidden truths, because that was intriguing. I do love it when we do episodes about like that chaos book last time, like our conspiracy stuff. I feel like the alien shit has really died down a lot, which sucks, but I'm trying to hold faith quietly for that one.
You can also
the
research
AI
some older stuff on aliens, right? Like there is stuff out there that is not well known, I think, that but is also not particularly recent.
They also said not to stay with the current narrative and dig stuff out that we're interested in and talk about it. Like, it specifically did say that. So to Rab's point, like, maybe that's some things that we should do too.
Agreed. The first thing that popped in my mind when you said that was discussing the 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg, which I recently stumbled upon and has been coming up a lot lately. Like, I know that's just confirmation bias or whatever. Like, I know that
it's also algorithms.
Algorithmic for sure. Like, I said it out loud a couple times, and so now Google's wanting to feed me stuff about it. But I don't know, like, those kind of things, like, I don't know, I haven't heard a whole lot about it besides what I've read on the Wikipedia page, you know,
Yeah,
about
I mean, that ties some themes together. I could do like historical context too, like, so that definitely hits on a few buttons.
Yeah, maybe, okay, well, maybe we'll do a future episode about the 1561 Nuremberg celestial event.
Yeah, don't look it up on Wikipedia in the meantime. Just enjoy us talking about it.
Yeah, because we're just going to be reading the Wikipedia on that episode.
I
So
think
don't
there's
do
going to
that.
be more out there.
Yeah, I think there probably will be too. And then like there are other celestial events like that where people, in the past have all come together and said, "Hey, we looked up in the sky and saw this really bizarre thing, but like it was so long ago that very little's known about it or very little was recorded about it." It'd be interesting to find out some more about those kind of things. But I do think that reaching into like those like darker topics and those less talked about topics could be like a key to us, getting an audience of a specific kind. We were leaning.
I don't even think it. I was just gonna say that I don't even think it's that necessarily. It's that one. It's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's it brings out a special voice for the podcast as a whole. It's not something that a lot of people do. Secondly, it's not us talking about the things that are in the news that it's all being shoved down their throats. Like anytime you go to any social media, you're just being told about whatever fucking shenanigan you don't want to hear about. And so maybe this could be, maybe we're the break that people get from having to listen to the shit they don't want to hear about all the time.
Yeah. Makes sense. I did get some feedback from a friend about our recent like political episodes. They're like feeling that so much. And I was like, that's fair.
Which episode are you talking about?
Specifically, not the summer episode, but the one we did about
politics and candidates.
Yeah, it was the one right before we ended last season.
Well, that doesn't make sense, honestly. I can imagine us not ending on what is not a banger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely
that. And like I asked another friend if they wanted to come on the show, and they were like I like your show, but like I don't like to get political, and I don't want anybody thinking that like I side politically with whatever your guys' thing is because I'm on the show. And I was like, that's interesting, but also it might just be that you shouldn't be on the show, like fine all around. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're worried about people taking you out of context, you probably shouldn't be on a podcast.
Yeah, particularly us, because we take everything out of context.
Yeah, well, and not to mention, like, especially now, unless we're going to focus on being a political podcast, which is not our intention at all, when you talk about it, which I think is natural because we're all talking about it, but when you talk about it, it brings a certain stinkiness with it for those who don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And I think that's those types of things is something to be wary of, which I had never really thought about before. I never really took that into consideration, that, taking our podcast where we talk about things that interest us and intermingling that with something as serious as politics can really kind of damper our intentions and damper our perception and things like that.
Yeah. And I'm not implying that I don't want to do any episodes about politics, because like I really do. I really enjoy talking about it. I'm just saying that like I think maybe even up until this past week, I was just feeling pulled to do more episodes about politics. Like I like before I went to camp, I was just really, really deep into the presidential campaign in like probably not a super mentally healthy way. And I just wanted to talk about it. I was just feeling like revved up about it. And like, I don't need to do that on the podcast. You know what I mean? Like this podcast doesn't need to become me, being angry about
or me. Trump.
Yeah.
It's the Wiggy rants.
But like, I really enjoy like FDR episode, and like I know we're getting ready to do a Mussolini episode. Like those things, seeing how like those scenarios like fed into where we are now, that makes a lot of sense to me as far
I
as
was going to say, as a contrary point, or maybe not a contrary point, every single history episode is a politics episode,
Mhm.
believe it or not. So you don't like politics, probably, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that person does like history episodes, maybe they don't. But it's certainly the only air about that, because I feel like to some degree there are many things in this moment that I cannot change, that I don't like about the world and how things are. So it makes sense to me to look backwards, the way of maybe doing something towards, in a positive way, or maybe just to, try to understand more, like, how did we get here, right? I mean, you can't change anything unless you know how did you get here.
Something that, I was thinking about when it came to, history and history episodes and kind of on the trajectory that we're on, is that once we get through this World War II era, there's still a lot more to talk about.
True.
There's a lot to go over, a lot to talk about, and something that is going to blow your guys' minds maybe. But have you guys ever stopped to think that 9/11 is history books to most people now? That is not something that they lived through. Also,
not most people, but
a lot of podcast
people for sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, so something like that. But there's also, like, we could go back, like, and we can go all the way. There's just so much to go through. Like Reagan, for example. That's a gigantic one. Like that entire era was fucking crazy. And like there's a lot more to go through. We're not going to stop just at World War II. We started at World War II because we fucking love World War II.
Yeah, but I was going to say, like, going to go into for a second the reason why I chose World War II in particular. I think that the reason is because it's far enough back. Most of the history is non-controversial in the sense that it's not really disputed. And the other reason, like, and I think also if you went farther back, though, I think if you go farther back, you do learn some things about, like, how World War II came to happen, for sure, right? And even Napoleon, right? I think if I truly had infinite time in this world and it was only a history podcast for me, I would probably start Napoleon, because I think that he really did have a lot of influence on our modern era. But then it's like, okay, well, what do you have to talk about the French Revolution too? And then, like, you can really fall into a rabbit hole going that way. So so the reason I chose World War II is I think it's a balance, right? And also the fact that very oldest people in society are people who were young when they were young when World War II was going on. Like, the people old enough to fight in it have mostly already died off, mostly. And the very oldest members of our society are people who were there for it, but not super aware of what was happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of history. We've been around a long time.
Yeah, but America hasn't been around that long. And
nope.
I'm glad that we mostly tend to focus on, like, how it's affecting us here now.
We still have Japan to go through.
And that's another reason to talk about World War II too, because it has to do with how the US is particular. Like, that is really when the US came onto the scene. That really is the reason why every history episode is a politics episode in a way, because we're talking about how did we, meaning this nation, and I would say that extends to Western Europe, to where it is, right? So, I think that's kind of thoughts on it.
Yeah, and as I don't know anything about Mussolini, so I'm looking forward to that next episode. I'm gonna learn. My mind could be a fun one.
I'm ready for it too. There's some things that I know, but there's a lot that I don't know. So I'm interested to hear what Rep's gonna bring to the table.
Stay tuned for that one. That one should be really fun.
Excellent.
Okay, well, I think I'm done pulling cards. We've been talking for a while now. This was fun. Good episode. Come back next week for the Mussolini episode, because that's when that one will be coming out.
And if you want to see this episode on video, sign up for the Patreon, friends.
Right.
We've got it's very, very cheap. We promise you.
You can we're not really cute panda cards if you come look at the video. They're fun.
Yeah. You can also see my collection of Baby Yodas.
Sure.
If you like Baby Yoda. Or Grogu. Depending on whether or not I want to piss you off.
Angle, see Adam Sandler. Is that right? It is Adam Sandler, right, Jacob?
It is Adam Sandler.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Thoughts Expanded, Season 3. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.